The vastness of space had always made humans feel small, but on this day, it made them feel watched. Deep within Earth's monitoring station Omega, buried in the icy plains of Antarctica, technician Frank Wilson stared at his screen with growing concern. The anomalous readings had started 3 days ago, subtle at first, but now undeniable. "Sir, you need to see this," Frank called to his supervisor, pointing at the pattern forming across his monitors. "Something big is approaching our solar system. Multiple objects, moving in formation." Within hours, the news reached the highest levels of government. By the next morning, Captain Jack Rogers of the International Space Defense Force was being briefed in an underground facility beneath Geneva. Grainy images showed a fleet of vessels unlike anything humans had ever built, moving with purpose toward Earth. "How long until they reach us?" asked General Adams, his weathered face betraying no emotion. "At current speed, 6 days," replied the scientist beside him. The room fell silent. The world's leaders gathered virtually, old rivalries momentarily forgotten in the face of something far more pressing. They watched as humanity's most advanced ships moved to intercept the alien fleet at the edge of the solar system. Captain Rogers led the mission from the bridge of the EDS Defender. He had been chosen for his calm demeanor and diplomatic background, qualities that would be tested sooner than expected. "They're hailing us," reported his communications officer, voice steady despite the circumstances. The screen flickered to life, revealing a humanoid figure with gray-blue skin and eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The being spoke, its words translated by the ship's computer. "I am High Commander Drell of the Dominion. Your planet has been selected for integration into our empire. You will surrender your resources and accept our governance." Rogers maintained his composure. "We welcome peaceful contact with other civilizations, but Earth is not available for integration. We invite discussion as equals." The alien's expression didn't change. "Equality is a concept for those of similar power. We have studied your broadcasts. Your technology is primitive. Your species is divided. You have 30 days to prepare for our arrival and formal surrender. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force." The transmission ended abruptly. Rogers looked around at his crew, their faces reflecting the gravity of what they'd just heard. Back on Earth, panic mixed with determination. Some called for immediate surrender, hoping to avoid destruction. Others demanded resistance at any cost. In an emergency session of the United Nations, a historic decision was made. Earth would stand united against this threat. The newly formed Earth Defense Alliance took control of military assets worldwide. Scientists were given unlimited resources to develop defensive technologies. Factories switched from producing cars to crafting weapons and shields. In his laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, Professor Mark Brown made a discovery that gave humanity its first glimmer of hope. Analyzing the brief communication with the aliens, he detected unusual radiation patterns. "Their technology has a specific energy signature," he explained to the assembled military leaders. "If we can replicate it, we might be able to interfere with their systems." Meanwhile, intelligence agencies discovered they weren't the first to face the Dominion. Intercepted communications revealed a pattern. The aliens had conquered dozens of worlds using similar tactics, always beginning with the same 30-day warning. As the deadline approached, Earth transformed. Former enemies worked side by side. Ordinary people trained for resistance. Underground shelters were stocked and fortified. Captain Rogers was given command of Earth's makeshift defense fleet, a collection of military vessels, retrofitted commercial ships, and hastily constructed fighters. They were outmatched in every way, but they had something the Dominion hadn't counted on: the desperate creativity of a species fighting for its home. On the 29th day, humanity held its breath. The Dominion fleet appeared in Earth's orbit, precisely as promised. But they found not a planet ready to surrender, but one prepared to fight with everything it had. Earth's preparation for war transformed every aspect of daily life. Cities dimmed their lights at night, factories ran day and night, and civilians trained alongside military personnel. The 30-day countdown created a sense of desperate urgency that united humanity in ways no one thought possible. Professor Brown worked tirelessly in his laboratory, sleeping only a few hours each night on a cot beside his workstation. His team had made breakthrough after breakthrough, reverse engineering what little they could from the brief alien transmission. The energy signature operates on principles we've theorized but never achieved, he explained to General Adams during one of their daily briefings. It's like they've mastered quantum entanglement on a massive scale. While scientists worked on defense technology, Captain Rogers drilled his pilots relentlessly. The makeshift fleet grew daily as commercial vessels were fitted with hastily designed weapon systems. Former airline pilots trained alongside veteran fighter pilots, learning to operate in space. They'll expect us to follow traditional military doctrine, Rogers told his squadron leaders, but we don't have the numbers or firepower for that. We need to be unpredictable, use our knowledge of the solar system. Think like guerrilla fighters, not a conventional army. Underground, a vast network of shelters expanded across the globe. Old subway tunnels, mine shafts, and natural caves were reinforced and stocked with supplies. If the surface became uninhabitable, humanity would survive below. On day 15, an unexpected opportunity arose. The Dominion sent a small scout ship toward Earth, presumably to assess the planet's defenses. General Adams saw a chance to test their new capabilities. We can't let them report back what they see, he said during an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. But if we can capture that ship intact, it would give Professor Brown real alien technology to study. A stealth team led by Major Tom Williams launched from a hidden base in the Pacific. Their ship, painted with experimental light-absorbing material, approached the alien scout vessel undetected. Using the radiation matching technology Professor Brown had developed, they managed to override the scout ship's airlock. The boarding action was swift and decisive. The alien crew, clearly not expecting resistance, surrendered after a brief firefight. Within hours, the captured vessel was hidden in an underground facility, and Professor Brown had his hands on actual Dominion technology. This changes everything, he said, eyes wide with excitement and lack of sleep. Their systems are advanced, but not incomprehensible. We can adapt much of this to our ships. The captured aliens, 3 in total, proved another valuable source of information. Though initially refusing to cooperate, they became more talkative when they realized their superiors had abandoned them. The youngest, who called himself Mech, revealed that the Dominion's tactics relied heavily on psychological warfare. Many worlds surrender without fighting, he explained through the translation device. Those who resist are made examples, but the Dominion fleet is spread thin across many systems. They count on fear more than actual strength. This information spread through the Defense Alliance like wildfire, boosting morale and intensifying preparations. If the Dominion wasn't as all-powerful as they claimed, perhaps Earth stood a chance. With 10 days remaining, Professor Brown unveiled his crowning achievement, a shield system based on the captured ship's technology, but modified and improved using human ingenuity. It won't stop their weapons completely, he cautioned as technicians began installing the systems on Earth's defense fleet, but it should reduce their effectiveness by 60%. More importantly, it masks our own energy signatures, making our ships harder to target. As the final countdown began, Captain Rogers addressed his pilots one last time from the bridge of the flagship, now renamed EDS Defiance. They expect us to be primitive and divided, he said, his voice carried to every ship in Earth's improvised fleet. They expect us to surrender or die. Let's show them how badly they've underestimated what humans will do when fighting for their home. The Dominion fleet approached right on schedule, but Earth was no longer the easy target they had anticipated. The trap was set, and humanity was ready to spring it. Dawn broke over Earth's major cities as the Dominion fleet entered orbit. Their ships formed a perfect geometric pattern, a display of precision meant to intimidate. Massive vessels blocked out the sun in parts of North America, casting long shadows across terrified populations who watched from below. High Commander Drell's face appeared on communication systems worldwide. Your time has expired. We will now demonstrate the cost of defiance. Without warning, 3 Dominion warships broke formation and descended toward a remote research station in Greenland. The facility, home to just 80 scientists, had been studying climate change. Now it would become the first target in humanity's greatest war. Captain Rogers watched from the bridge of the EDS Defiance, hidden behind Earth's moon along with 2/3 of humanity's defense fleet. "They're making their demonstration," he said grimly, just as the intelligence predicted. General Adams, coordinating from the underground command center, gave the order they had been waiting for. Operation First Strike is go. May God help us all. Across Earth's orbit, hidden defense platforms suddenly activated. The Dominion had detected some of Earth's military satellites, but had dismissed them as primitive observation tools. They never suspected that Professor Brown had converted them into energy weapon platforms using technology derived from their own scout ship. Brilliant beams of concentrated energy lanced upward from the platforms, striking the 3 descending warships. The alien vessels shuddered as their shields absorbed the unexpected attack. "They're surprised but not damaged," reported Rogers' tactical officer. "Shields holding at 80%. Launch attack squadrons," Rogers commanded. "Pattern Omega as planned." From behind the moon, hundreds of Earth fighters emerged, moving in seemingly chaotic patterns. The Dominion fleet, expecting a conventional approach, found their targeting systems struggling to lock onto the erratically moving vessels. Major Williams led the first wave in his retrofitted fighter. "Remember the drills," he told his squadron. "Get close enough that their big guns can't track you. Hit the radiation nodes we identified." The Earth fighters swarmed around the larger Dominion vessels like angry hornets. Professor Brown's shields proved effective, absorbing energy blasts that would have otherwise vaporized the smaller craft. Precision strikes targeted the weak points identified from the captured scout ship. On the Dominion command vessel, High Commander Drell watched in growing disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered as damage reports flooded in. "Their technology is too primitive for this level of resistance." The demonstration attack on Greenland never happened. The 3 warships, under heavy fire from both the orbital platforms and fighter squadrons, were forced to retreat back to the main fleet. Earth's first victory came at a cost. Nearly 30% of the attacking fighters were lost, despite the new shield technology. But they had drawn first blood and proven the Dominion was not invincible. In the command center, General Adams received the casualty reports with a heavy heart. Each name represented a brave soul who had given everything for Earth's defense, but their sacrifice had yielded crucial information. Their ships redirect power to shields under attack. Professor Brown explained, analyzing the battle data. "It leaves other systems temporarily vulnerable. We can use that." The Dominion regrouped, clearly reassessing their approach. High Commander Drell opened communications again, but this time his tone had shifted slightly. "Your resistance is more organized than anticipated," he acknowledged, "but it changes nothing. You have merely delayed the inevitable and ensured your eventual subjugation will be more painful." Captain Rogers responded with a message of his own. "We're just getting started. Earth is not your colony. Leave now, and we can avoid further bloodshed." The communication ended, and both sides prepared for the next phase. The Dominion called in reinforcements from nearby systems, while Earth used the precious time to continue retrofitting ships and training pilots. As night fell across the battlefront, humanity celebrated its first small victory. People gathered in shelters and homes, sharing news of the successful defense. Hope, that most powerful of human emotions, began to spread. Earth had stood its ground. The war had just begun, but humanity had served notice. The price of this invasion would be higher than the Dominion ever imagined. The Dominion's response came 3 days later. A fleet twice the size of the first arrived, emerging from what scientists could only describe as folds in space. These reinforcements transformed the standoff into an overwhelming force that darkened Earth's skies. "They've called in their reserves," Captain Rogers observed grimly. "Far more ships than our intelligence suggested they could deploy." Professor Brown studied the new arrivals from his underground laboratory. "The energy readings are different," he noted. "These ships appear to be older models, less advanced than the first wave." The implication was clear. The Dominion had scrounged whatever vessels they could find to crush Earth's unexpected resistance. It was both encouraging and terrifying. The aliens were taking humanity seriously, but they were also committing to total victory. High Commander Drell didn't bother with threats this time. The massive fleet split into attack groups, each targeting major population centers. Paris, Tokyo, New York, Mumbai. Cities that had defined human civilization became battlegrounds in an instant. Earth's defense platforms engaged immediately, their energy weapons slicing through space toward the invaders. But there were too many targets. The defensive grid spread too thin. "Evacuate the surface in targeted zones," General Adams ordered. The emergency broadcasts activated worldwide, sending millions into the underground shelters prepared during the 30-day grace period. Captain Rogers watched in horror as the first Dominion weapons struck Tokyo. The city's shield, hastily constructed using Professor Brown's technology, held briefly before collapsing under the sustained assault. Buildings crumbled as energy beams cut through steel and concrete. "We can't win a direct confrontation," Rogers told his command staff. "Implement Operation Shadowbox." Earth's defense fleet scattered, abandoning traditional formations. Instead of meeting the Dominion head-on, they executed the guerrilla tactics they had rehearsed. Small, fast-moving squadrons struck at the flanks of the alien formation before disappearing into the debris fields created by the space battles. Major Williams led a particularly daring raid, using the rings of Saturn as cover to ambush a Dominion supply convoy. "They're expecting us to defend our cities directly," he told his pilots. "Instead, we'll cut their supply lines and force them to divide their attention." On the ground, the situation grew desperate. Mumbai's shield failed completely, leaving the city exposed. But the Dominion found an unexpected response. The city appeared abandoned, its millions of inhabitants hidden in the extensive tunnel network beneath the urban center. When Dominion ground forces landed to secure the area, they walked into ambushes set by trained civilian resistance fighters. The aliens had expected to face military personnel, not ordinary people defending their homes with improvised weapons and intimate knowledge of the terrain. Professor Brown worked frantically as the battles raged. The captured Dominion technology had revealed something critical. Their ships used a standardized communication protocol across all vessels, regardless of age or model. "It's their weakness," he explained to General Adams. "Their entire fleet operates on the same basic system. If we can disrupt it, we might be able to throw their coordination into chaos." The professor's team developed what they called a Babel field, a transmission that would corrupt the Dominion's communication network. The technology was ready, but there was one problem. It needed to be deployed from within the enemy fleet. Captain Rogers volunteered immediately. "The Defiance has the strongest shields. We'll disguise ourselves as a damaged Dominion vessel using the signature masking technology and get close enough to deploy the Babel field." The mission was approved despite its suicidal nature. As the Defiance prepared to depart, Earth suffered its greatest losses yet. Half of North America's eastern seaboard lay in ruins. Europe's ancient capitals burned. Billions sheltered underground, surviving on stockpiled supplies. Yet even in this darkest hour, humanity refused to surrender. For every city destroyed, resistance cells formed. For every Dominion victory, Earth forces claimed a smaller but significant counter-victory. The war had evolved from a conquest into a brutal struggle of attrition. The Dominion had expected submission, but found themselves mired in a conflict against an enemy that simply would not accept defeat. And as Captain Rogers' ship slipped behind enemy lines, the next phase of Earth's desperate plan began to unfold. The EDS Defiance moved silently through the debris field, its hull modified to mimic the radiation signature of a damaged Dominion scout ship. Captain Rogers stood on the bridge, watching as his vessel approached the heart of the enemy fleet. Every crew member understood the mission's importance and its likely cost. "Dominion flagship detected," whispered the tactical officer. 12 kilometers starboard, surrounded by a defensive screen of cruisers. Rogers nodded grimly. "Maintain approach vector. All hands prepare for Operation Thunderstrike." Below decks, a small team led by Major Williams made final adjustments to Professor Brown's Babel device. The professor himself had insisted on joining the mission, despite the dangers. "The calibration must be perfect," Brown explained, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Too weak, and it won't disrupt their systems. Too strong, and they'll detect it before it fully deploys." As the Defiance crept closer to the Dominion command ship, Earth continued its desperate fight. The guerrilla tactics had slowed the alien advance but couldn't stop it. Half the planet's surface was now under enemy control, with billions of humans living in underground cities and mountain strongholds. Yet the human spirit proved resilient in ways the Dominion never expected. Factories hidden deep within the Earth's crust continued producing weapons and supplies. Children too young to fight served as messengers, their small frames navigating ventilation shafts between resistance outposts. Elderly engineers repurposed everyday items into tools of war. The Defiance passed through the outer defensive screen unchallenged, its disguise holding. On the flagship's bridge, High Commander Drell received troubling reports from ground forces. "The humans scatter like insects when we approach," reported a field commander. "They know their tunnels too well. For every cell we destroy, 2 more emerge elsewhere." Drell's patience had worn thin. "Begin orbital bombardment of suspected underground complexes. If they hide beneath the surface, we will crack the surface open." The order sent shockwaves of horror through the monitoring systems of Earth's intelligence network. General Adams received the intercept in the primary command bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. "They're going to target the shelters," he announced to his staff. "We're out of time. Signal the Defiance. Execute Thunderstrike immediately, ready or not." The message reached Captain Rogers just as the Defiance came within optimal range of the Dominion flagship. "It's now or never," he told his crew. Launch disruptors. Small, drone-like devices shot from concealed ports on the Defiance, speeding toward key ships in the Dominion fleet. Each carried a miniature version of the Babel field generator, designed to create a network of disruption. The disguise held for precious seconds longer, just enough time for the drones to reach their targets. Then alarms blared across the Dominion fleet as the Defiance was finally recognized as an enemy vessel. "Babel field activating," Professor Brown announced, watching his instruments intently. 3 seconds to full deployment. Energy weapons from a dozen Dominion ships converged on the Defiance. Its advanced shields, the best Earth could produce, began to fail almost immediately under the concentrated assault. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, reported the damage control officer. "Shield generators overloading." Captain Rogers stood firm. "Hold position. The Babel field needs 18 more seconds to fully integrate with their systems." The ship shuddered violently as direct hits penetrated the failing shields. Life support systems failed across multiple decks, but the crew of the Defiance held their ground, buying the seconds needed with their lives. On the Dominion flagship, chaos erupted. Control systems flickered and died. Communications between vessels dissolved into unintelligible static. Weapons systems locked or fired randomly. High Commander Drell watched in disbelief as his perfect military machine fell into disarray. "What have they done?" he demanded, but his officers had no answers. The Babel field spread from ship to ship, corrupting the standardized systems the Dominion relied upon. Their technological superiority, built on uniformity and centralized control, became their greatest vulnerability. The Defiance, crippled and burning, began its desperate retreat. They had struck a critical blow. but at terrible cost. Over half the crew was dead or injured, and the ship's engines were failing. As Rogers ordered the evacuation of critically wounded personnel to escape pods, Earth launched its counterattack. Every fighter, every converted cargo ship, every remaining defense platform struck at once, targeting the now disorganized Dominion fleet. The tide had finally begun to turn. The battlefield's effects exceeded even Professor Brown's expectations. For nearly 6 hours, the Dominion fleet drifted in disarray, unable to coordinate attacks or defenses. Earth seized this precious window of opportunity with desperate determination. Captain Rogers and the surviving crew of the Defiance were rescued by Major Williams' squadron. The captain, badly injured but still conscious, refused medical treatment until he could brief General Adams directly. "The battlefield won't hold them forever," Rogers warned, blood seeping through a makeshift bandage on his arm. "Their techs are already working to restore communications, but we discovered something crucial. Their flagship contains a central database with details of all Dominion-controlled territories. This information changed everything. What had been a desperate fight for survival could potentially become a liberation campaign across multiple worlds." General Adams assembled Earth's remaining military leaders. "We have an unprecedented opportunity," he told them. "With the Dominion fleet temporarily crippled, we can transition from defense to offense." Operation Counter Invasion launched within hours. Earth vessels, now equipped with technology reverse-engineered from captured Dominion ships, pushed beyond the solar system. Their first target, a nearby star system that intelligence identified as a key Dominion forward base. Professor Brown, still recovering from injuries sustained aboard the Defiance, led the technical team that prepared for the assault. "Their base defenses will still be operational," he cautioned. "But without coordination from the main fleet, they'll be vulnerable to synchronized attacks." The Earth Strike Force, led by Major Williams, emerged from faster-than-light travel on the edge of the alien system. They found not just a military base, but a conquered world. The native population, reptilian humanoids called the Neth, had been subjugated decades earlier. "Standard Dominion procedure," explained the former captive mech, who had volunteered to assist Earth forces. "They strip resources, use locals for labor, and establish bases to extend their reach." The liberation of the Neth homeworld became the first battle of Earth's counter-invasion. Major Williams' forces struck the orbital defenses while resistance leaders made contact with Neth underground movements. Within 48 hours, the stunned Dominion garrison surrendered, never expecting an attack from a supposedly primitive world like Earth. News of the victory spread quickly. 2 more nearby systems, also under Dominion control, sent secret delegations to Earth's forces. Their message was simple: they too wished to fight for freedom. Back on Earth, the Dominion struggled to regain control. High Commander Drell faced mounting criticism from the Dominion leadership. Their supposedly easy conquest had turned into a military disaster. "The humans possess technology they should not have," Drell argued in his defense. "Someone has violated our laws and shared advanced knowledge with them." The accusation wasn't entirely wrong. Analysis of recovered Dominion databases revealed that other species had indeed helped humanity, not directly, but by leaving breadcrumbs of information in places Earth scientists might discover. The oppressed worlds had found a subtle way to fight back. Professor Brown used this new intelligence to develop weapons specifically targeting Dominion weaknesses. Their power distribution systems all follow the same basic architecture, he explained to General Adams. A precisely calibrated pulse can overload them without harming other technology. Earth forces deployed these new weapons across 3 fronts, disabling Dominion vessels with minimal damage, allowing them to be captured rather than destroyed. Earth's fleet grew with each victory, incorporating the very ships that had come to conquer them. High Commander Drell, desperate to regain control, launched a final assault on Earth's primary defense grid. The attack briefly broke through, allowing Dominion forces to strike at the underground command center in the Rocky Mountains. General Adams refused evacuation. "We stand our ground," he ordered as Dominion troops breached the outer perimeter. The battle for Earth's command center became legendary. Soldiers fighting alongside civilians, using both advanced weapons and improvised tools. The Dominion forces, expecting submission, instead found humans willing to die rather than surrender. As the battle raged on Earth, Major Williams led a daring mission deep into Dominion territory. Intelligence from liberated worlds had revealed the location of the Dominion homeworld and its surprisingly vulnerable central defense network. The war had transformed. Earth was no longer fighting for survival alone. It now led a coalition of formerly subjugated species in a campaign that threatened the very heart of the Dominion Empire. The Dominion homeworld hung like a jewel in space, surrounded by defensive platforms and warships pulled back from conquered territories. High Commander Drell stood disgraced before the Imperial Council, the highest authority in the Dominion. "You assured us Earth would fall easily," the first counselor said, voice cold with contempt. "Instead, we face rebellion across 23 systems. Our empire crumbles while you make excuses." Drell bowed his head. "The humans possess an adaptability we have never encountered. They learn, they innovate. They should be extinct," interrupted the second counselor. "Deploy the planet killer. End this now." The decision was made. The Dominion would commit its most terrible weapon, one used only twice in its 1,000-year history, a device capable of shattering a planet's core, turning a living world into an asteroid field. Unaware of this development, Earth forces continued their advance. The Coalition fleet, now including ships from 7 liberated worlds, prepared for a final push toward the Dominion center of power. Captain Rogers, recovered from his injuries, commanded from the bridge of a captured Dominion cruiser, renamed Freedom. "Our intelligence indicates their fleet is consolidated around the homeworld," he told his officers. "They've abandoned outer colonies to protect their center." Professor Brown, joining via secure transmission from Earth, looked concerned. "Their energy readings have changed. They're gathering power for something massive." The warning came too late. The Dominion stealth vessel slipped past Earth's defenses, deploying the planet killer in the asteroid belt. The device activated, sending gravitational waves toward Earth that would eventually tear the planet apart. General Adams received the alert in the newly rebuilt command center. "Evacuation is impossible," he reported to Captain Rogers. "We have hours, not days." Rogers made the hardest decision of his life. Divert all liberation forces back to Earth. We must destroy that device before it's too late. Major Williams led the desperate mission, his squadron racing toward the asteroid belt, where the planet killer pulsed with increasing power. Standard weapons had no effect, he reported after the first attack run. "The gravitational shield absorbs everything we throw at it." On Earth, Professor Brown worked frantically on a solution. "The device operates on principles similar to their FTL drives," he explained to General Adams. "It creates a gravitational singularity that grows until it consumes its target." "Can we stop it?" Adams asked simply. Brown nodded slowly. "Not from here. Someone needs to overload it from inside its shielding." The mission was technically possible but suicidal. Whoever piloted the ship carrying the overload device would never return. Major Williams volunteered immediately. "I'll need the fastest ship we have," he said, "and every bit of power we can generate." As preparations for the desperate mission continued, Captain Rogers made another bold decision. His fleet would not retreat to Earth. They would advance to the Dominion homeworld. "They've committed everything to this weapon," he told his commanders. "Their home defenses are weakened. If we strike now, we might end this war regardless of what happens to Earth." The dual operations launched simultaneously. Major Williams piloted a modified fighter directly toward the planet killer, carrying a device designed to reverse its gravitational field. Captain Rogers led the Coalition fleet in a lightning strike against the Dominion capital. High Commander Drell watched in horror as Earth ships appeared in formation around the homeworld. "Impossible. All our calculations indicated they would defend their planet." The first counselor stared at the tactical display in disbelief. They sacrificed their homeworld to defeat us. What manner of beings are these humans? In the asteroid belt, Major Williams' ship approached the planet killer. Earth felt the first tremors as the weapon's influence reached the planet's mantle. Buildings swayed. Fissures appeared in the ground. Time was running out. Williams' voice came through static-filled communications. Device armed. Approaching target zone now. His ship disappeared into the gravitational distortion field surrounding the planet killer. For one terrible moment, the tremors on Earth intensified. Then, suddenly, they stopped. The asteroid belt lit up with energy as the planet killer collapsed in on itself, creating a brief, brilliant new star in Earth's sky. At the same moment, Captain Rogers' fleet broke through the last Dominion defenses. The Imperial Council, faced with enemy ships in orbit and rebellions across their territory, finally did what they had never done before. They surrendered. The war ended not with Earth's destruction, but with the Dominion's collapse. The empire that had terrorized hundreds of worlds for a millennium fell to a species they had dismissed as primitive. The humans who had fought to save their world found themselves at the center of a new interstellar alliance, built not on conquest, but on mutual defense and respect. The ultimate price had been paid, not by Earth, but by the empire that had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, the will to remain free, whatever the cost.